There is a reason you are here right now, and it is not random. Out of all the moments in your life, out of all the noise, all the distractions, all the things you could be doing, you stopped. You paused. You clicked. And now you're listening. That was not an accident. Because something inside you, something deeper than logic, recognized this moment. And I need you to understand this clearly. This message is for you. Not for everyone. Not for the crowd. Not for those who scroll without thinking. For you. Because you've been carrying something. You don't always talk about it. You don't always show it. But it's there, in the quiet moments. In the late nights. In the way your mind doesn't switch off when the world goes silent. You've been questioning things. Why things didn't work out the way you expected. Why certain people walked away. Why opportunities slipped through your hands just when you thought they were yours. And the truth is, it's been exhausting. There are days when you feel strong. Like you've finally figured it out. And then there are moments where everything hits at once. Doubt. Fear. Uncertainty. And in those moments, a voice inside you whispers, maybe I'm not enough. But listen carefully. That voice is not the truth. It never was. Because what you've been through was never meant to break you. It was meant to prepare you. I know that sounds difficult to believe, especially when you're in the middle of it. Especially when nothing seems to make sense. But there are things happening behind the scenes of your life, things you cannot see yet. Connections being aligned. Paths being redirected. Doors closing, not to punish you, but to protect you. And here's what most people don't realize. Sometimes the delay you hate is the protection you needed. Sometimes the rejection you cried over is the redirection that saves you. You see, you've been looking at your life like something is missing. Like you're behind. Like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck trying to understand what went wrong. But what if nothing went wrong? What if this phase, this confusion, this waiting, is actually the moment before everything shifts? Because there is something about you, something you don't fully see yet. You are not ordinary. Not in the way you think. You feel things deeply. You notice what others ignore. You think about life in a way that most people avoid. And yes, sometimes that feels like a burden. But it's not. It's a sign. A sign that you were never meant to live on autopilot. You were never meant to follow the same path as everyone else. You were meant to wake up. To question. To grow. To become. And that kind of journey is never easy. Because growth, real growth, comes with discomfort. It comes with moments where everything familiar starts to fall apart. Where you don't recognize your own life anymore. Where the things that once made you happy no longer feel the same. And that's where most people give up. They go back. Back to comfort. Back to distraction. Back to pretending everything is fine. But you didn't. Even when it got hard, even when it didn't make sense. You kept going. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not confidently. But you didn't stop. And that matters more than you realize. Because right now, you are standing at a point in your life where something is about to change. Not in a small way. Not in a temporary way. In a way that shifts how you see everything. But before that happens, you need to let go of something. And this is the part people struggle with the most. You need to let go of who you thought you had to be. The version of you that was trying to please everyone. The version of you that was afraid of being judged. The version of you that stayed quiet, even when you had something important to say. That version got you this far. But it cannot take you where you're meant to go next. Because where you're going requires a different level of honesty. A different level of courage. A different level of self-belief. And I know, that sounds heavy. Because stepping into that version of yourself means facing things you've been avoiding. It means acknowledging your fears, instead of hiding from them. It means choosing yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable. But here's the truth you need to hear today. You are ready. Not someday. Not when everything is perfect. Now. Even if you don't feel ready. Even if your mind is full of doubts. Even if part of you is still scared. Because readiness is not about feeling confident. It's about deciding to move forward anyway. And the moment you do that, everything begins to shift. Opportunities start appearing where there were none. People start entering your life who actually understand you. Clarity begins to replace confusion. But it all starts with a decision. A decision to stop underestimating yourself. A decision to stop waiting for permission. A decision to finally trust that you are not here by accident. Because you're not. There is a reason you've gone through everything you've gone through. There is a reason you feel the way you feel. There is a reason this message found you, at this exact moment. And it's not just to make you feel better. It's to wake something up inside you. Something that has been quiet for too long. Something powerful. Something real. And as you sit here listening to this, I want you to ask yourself something honestly. What have you been ignoring, that you know deep down you need to face? Not what's easy. Not what's comfortable. The truth. Because that answer is the first step toward everything changing. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. That's where your transformation begins. And this is only the beginning. You felt something when you heard that, didn't you? That quiet pause inside your chest, that moment where everything else faded for just a second. That wasn't coincidence. That was recognition. Because when truth reaches you at the right time, it doesn't just sound good. It hits. And right now, something is starting to shift inside you. But let me be very clear about something. This next phase of your life will not look like the last one. It can't. Because the version of you that survived the past is not the version of you that is meant to step into what's coming next. And that's where the discomfort begins. Because change, real change, doesn't arrive gently. It challenges you. It forces you to look at things you've been avoiding. It puts you in situations where your old patterns no longer work. And suddenly, you feel exposed. You feel uncertain. You feel like you're losing control. But what you don't realize is, you're not losing control. You're losing illusions. The illusion that you had to keep shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. The illusion that your worth depended on other people's approval. The illusion that playing it safe would somehow lead you to a meaningful life. It won't. It never has. And deep down, you already know that. That's why staying where you are feels heavier now. That's why things that used to be fine now feel unbearable. Because you've outgrown them. And outgrowing something is one of the most uncomfortable experiences you'll ever go through. Because it doesn't just ask you to leave something behind. It asks you to become someone new. And that process feels like losing parts of yourself. But here's the truth no one tells you. You're not losing yourself. You're meeting your real self for the first time. The one that isn't built on fear. The one that isn't shaped by expectations. The one that doesn't apologize for existing. But to meet that version of you, you have to go through the moment where everything feels uncertain. Where you don't have all the answers. Where you can't see the full path ahead. And that's exactly where you are right now. Standing in between who you used to be, and who you're becoming. And I know how uncomfortable that space is. Because it feels like nothing is stable. Like you're drifting. Like you're trying to hold on to something, but there's nothing solid to grab. But what if I told you that this exact moment is where your power is? Not when everything is clear. Not when everything is perfect. Right here. In the uncertainty. Because this is where you stop relying on what's familiar. And start discovering what's possible. This is where you stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I finally become who I'm meant to be? And that question changes everything. Because fear will always show you the worst-case scenario. It will always try to convince you to stay where it's safe. But growth whispers something different. It asks you to trust, before you have proof. To move, before you feel ready. To believe, before you see results. And that's not easy. But neither is staying stuck. Neither is living a life that feels incomplete. Neither is ignoring that voice inside you that keeps saying, there's more. Because there is more. More for you to experience. More for you to become. More for you to step into. But you don't access that more by staying the same. You access it by choosing differently. By acting differently. By thinking differently. And most importantly, by seeing yourself differently. Because the way you see yourself right now is shaping every decision you make. Every opportunity you take, or don't take. Every risk you avoid. Every moment you hesitate. And if you keep seeing yourself as someone who isn't ready, You will keep holding yourself back, even when the door is open. But the moment you shift that, the moment you start seeing yourself as someone who is capable, who is evolving, who is allowed to grow beyond their past, everything begins to change. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you become stronger, more aware, more intentional. And that's when things start aligning. Not magically, but naturally. Because you're no longer resisting your own growth. Now listen carefully. There is something specific in your life right now that you've been hesitating on. A decision. A move. A step forward. You've been overthinking it. Going back and forth. Waiting for the perfect moment. But that moment doesn't exist. It never will. Because clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. And the longer you wait, the heavier it will feel. Not because it's wrong, but because you're resisting what you already know. You already feel it. That pull. That quiet knowing. That sense that something needs to change. That something needs to move. And this is your confirmation. You're not imagining it. You're not overthinking it. You're being guided towards something greater. But you have to meet it halfway. You have to take that step. Even if it's small. Even if it's uncertain. Even if no one else understands it. Because this journey was never meant to be understood by everyone. It was meant to be lived by you. And as you move forward, you will notice something surprising. Things will start to fall away. People. Habits. Situations. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're no longer aligned with them. And yes, that can feel lonely. It can feel confusing. It can make you question if you're making the right choice. But don't mistake loneliness for misalignment. Sometimes, you have to walk alone for a while, so you can fully step into who you're becoming. And the moment you do, you won't be alone anymore. You'll attract people who see you clearly, who understand you without explanation, who support your growth, instead of resisting it. But first, you have to choose yourself. Not in a selfish way. In an honest way. In a way that says, I'm no longer going to abandon who I am, just to stay comfortable. And that decision changes everything. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself, you start building a life that actually feels right. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. And that's what you've been searching for all along. Something real. Something meaningful. Something that feels like it's actually yours. And you're closer to that than you think. Closer than you've ever been. But you can't go back now. Not after everything you've realized. Not after everything you've felt. You've seen too much. You've grown too much. And even if part of you wants to go back to what's familiar, you won't be able to stay there. Because you've changed. And change, once it begins, doesn't reverse. It only moves forward. So the question is not, is this happening? It is. The real question is, are you going to step into it? Or are you going to keep holding yourself back? Because this moment right here, this exact moment, is where your next chapter begins. And what you do now will decide how powerful that chapter becomes. There's something you haven't admitted to yourself yet. Not because you're hiding it on purpose, but because saying it out loud would change everything. Because once you admit it, you can't go back to pretending. You can't go back to the version of you that tolerated less. You can't go back to waiting. You can't go back to ignoring what you already feel deep inside. And that truth is this: you are meant for more than what you've been settling for. Not in an arrogant way. Not in a way that separates you from others. But in a way that calls you higher. In a way that asks you to stop shrinking your life just to make it easier to handle. Because let's be honest, you've been playing smaller than you actually are. You've been holding back your voice. Holding back your ideas. Holding back your potential. And you told yourself it was the right thing to do. You told yourself you needed more time. More experience. More confidence. But what if none of that is actually the reason? What if the real reason is fear? Fear of being seen. Fear of being judged. Fear of stepping into something bigger, and not knowing how to handle it. Because staying where you are feels safer. Predictable. Controlled. But here's the reality. Safe doesn't mean right. And predictable doesn't mean fulfilling. You can live an entire life inside your comfort zone and still feel like something is missing. Because comfort, without purpose, will always feel empty. And you've felt that emptiness. Even when things looked okay on the outside. Even when you told yourself, this is fine. There was still that feeling. That quiet discomfort. That sense that this isn't everything. And you were right. It isn't. Because you weren't built to live a life that just passes. You were built to live a life that means something. To you. Not to others. Not to expectations. To you. And that requires something most people avoid. Responsibility. Not the kind forced on you by the world. The kind you choose. The responsibility to stop waiting for life to happen. And start creating it. Because whether you realize it or not, you are already shaping your life every single day. Through your choices. Through your habits. Through what you allow, and what you avoid. And if you keep choosing the same patterns, you will keep getting the same results. No matter how much you wish things would change. Change doesn't respond to wishes. It responds to decisions. And right now, you are being asked to make one. A real one. Not a temporary one. Not something you say in a moment of motivation and forget the next day. A decision that shifts how you live. How you think. How you show up. Because the life you want will not come from the version of you that keeps hesitating. It will come from the version of you that decides, I'm done waiting. And I know that sounds simple. But it's not easy. Because making that decision means facing resistance. From your own mind. From your environment. From people who are used to the old version of you. They might not understand. They might question you. They might even try to pull you back into what's familiar. Not because they want to hurt you, but because your growth challenges their comfort. And that's something you need to be ready for. Because the moment you start changing, everything around you reacts. Some things will support you. Some things will test you. And some things will fall away completely. And that's where many people get scared. Because loss, even when it's necessary, still feels like loss. But let me give you a different way to see it. You're not losing what matters. You're releasing what no longer fits. There's a difference. A powerful one. Because what truly belongs in your life will not require you to shrink. Will not require you to ignore yourself. Will not require you to stay the same. It will grow with you. It will align with you. It will meet you at your level. And anything that doesn't was never meant to stay. Even if it once felt important. Even if it once felt right. Growth changes things. It changes you. And when you change, your life has to change with you. Now here's the part you need to hear carefully. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to know every step. You just need to stop standing still. Because movement creates clarity. Action reveals direction. And the more you move, the clearer things become. But if you stay stuck in your head, analyzing every possibility, waiting for certainty, you will stay exactly where you are. And deep down, you don't want that. You're tired of that. Tired of thinking more than you act. Tired of doubting more than you trust. Tired of holding yourself back, when you know you're capable of more. And that awareness, that frustration, that desire for something different, is not a problem. It's a signal. A signal that you're ready to move. Ready to shift. Ready to step into something greater. But readiness alone is not enough. You have to act on it. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Even if it feels uncertain. Even if it feels like you're stepping into the unknown. Because that's exactly what you're doing. You're stepping out of the known. Into the possible. And the possible is where your life changes. But only if you go there. Only if you stop holding on to what's familiar, just because it's familiar. Only if you allow yourself to grow beyond what you've always known. And that starts with one simple shift. Stop asking, can I do this? Start asking, what happens if I don't? Because if you don't, nothing changes. You stay in the same patterns. The same cycles. The same limitations. And years from now, you'll look back and realize you had the chance. You felt the moment. You knew something needed to change. But you didn't take the step. And that realization is heavier than any risk you could take right now. So don't ignore this. Don't brush it off. Don't tell yourself you'll think about it later. Because later turns into never. And this moment, this exact moment, is too important to miss. You are being called to step forward. To rise. To become. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way that requires perfection. In a real way. In a grounded way. In a way that aligns with who you truly are. And that version of you is not far away. It's right here. Waiting for you to stop holding back. Waiting for you to stop doubting. Waiting for you to finally say, I'm ready. Not because everything is clear, but because you are done standing still. And the moment you say that, and mean it, something inside you shifts. Something powerful. Something unstoppable. And once that shift happens, there is no going back. Only forward. Only growth. Only becoming. And that is where your real journey begins.